Hello and welcome to Tell the Truth. This is the episode where we're covering their third album from 1970, Benefit. Jethro Tull, at this time, had received some acclaim for their second album, Stand Up, and started to get a little bit of international notice. And particularly after a couple successful singles, such as Living in the Past, which was their first single to reach the United States, charting as high as 11 on the Billboard single charts. Tull got that United States crossover it needed to kind of expand the budget for this next album and give them a little bit more freedom. They embarked on their first really big tour of the United States around this time.
What's it say about the chart information? Is that just the Hot 100, just the everything chart, or is that the rock chart specifically?
That's the U.S. Hot 100.
Ah, okay. That's impressive, man. For their first time charting in the U.S., like 11, that's pretty fucking good.
It actually technically is their highest charting single, although Bungle in the Jungle would sell more ultimately. Mm-hmm. It lasted longer on the charts. It only peaked at 12. Tull never broke the top 10 in the U.S. Mm-hmm. But that said, in England, they were certainly more successful. Living in the Past was actually, which we talked about in our last episode, was actually a number 3 single in the U.K. And they followed that up with a number 7 single and then a number 4 single, which is the song that we're going to cover next. This song didn't chart in the U.S., but it did receive some FM radio play. And this music video was recorded on BBC's Top of the Pops, which, as I'm sure you're familiar with, Top of the Pops, typically what they would do is they would set it up to make it look like a live performance, but really they would just play the studio version. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this, for those who are looking to follow along with us, the video for Witch's Promise can be found alongside all other videos that we'll be talking about later during this presentation, at www.youtube.com/movieboozercom, and you go to the playlist for this episode, which is episode 2 of Told the Truth.
Yep.
Anyway, let's start the video.
Lend me your ear while I call you a fool.
Dan.
You were kissed by a witch one night in the woods.
First thing you notice is Ian Anderson's crazy eyes once again.
I noticed his blazer there, or is that like a bathrobe?
Something. It looks like a cut-off bathrobe or something, or a smoking jacket, like what Sherlock Holmes would wear.
Listen while laughing you flew. Leaves falling red, yellow, brown, all over sing. And the love you have found there outside in the rain, washed clean by the water, but nursing its pain.
One thing you notice about Jethro Tull music videos is they almost always focus solely on Anderson, mostly because he was pretty much the only band member that remained consistent with the in this video as well. If you
the music's drowning you out. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All these random hippies they keep cutting to.
Well, Top of the Pops was that sort of thing.
Keep looking, where to be. When you're wasting your time, they're not stupid like me. You might either still fall if you're too blind to see. You won't find it easy now. It's only
Anyway, moving out from that, Witch's Promise was a single. I consider it really one of Tull's first kind of. It's one of their first songs that I would say is like fully fleshed out from between the songwriting, the musicality of it. It really has this theatrical feel to it. It's one of the first songs of theirs that I think fully
Accomplish that, yeah.
Right, exactly. Living in the Past came close, but Witch's Promise has that orchestration in the background, the strings, which, by the way, the strings on the album were on the album Benefit, which Witch's Promise was a single that complemented, though the song wasn't actually on the album itself, were done by Dee Palmer. Dee Palmer was a composer and arranger who did a lot of work with the Royal Academy of Music, and he did string arrangements for groups everywhere from Pink Floyd, Genesis, Yes, The Beatles, and Queen, aside from Tull.
Jeez. Okay.
And it's one of their first real flirtations with that full theatrical sound that they would perfect in their later albums. And I really do appreciate that, and I thought it would be a good way to introduce it since that single came out prior to release of the album. There was a time, and I kind of dug this, when you could release singles that didn't have to be on the album. The single was sort of its own kind of art, and the album was its own thing too. Mm-hmm. That time is more or less past. I mean, occasionally you'll have artists release one-off singles, but it's less common.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it does still happen here and there, but yeah, it is very much so less common.
Of course, then again, on the other side of things, you have some artists who are starting to try to transition out of making albums altogether. What with the internet revolution, the single has sort of come back in a big way. I'm not so much a fan of that, because to me the greatest expression of a music artist is to show all the different levels of their ability, rather than just one single song. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's sort of my take on that issue. And before we begin talking about the album, I want to do a quick bit. I found an interview with Ian Anderson. This is a contemporary interview on a BBC series called Face to Face with Rick Wakeman, in which the keyboardist of Yes, Rick Wakeman, interviewed various musicians. There's a lot of great episodes on YouTube right now. If you're looking, I believe Tony Iommi's interviewed. I believe there's a few other really solid rock artists, but the part of the interview that I'm going to jump to, and I actually have a time code specifically set for this, is there's a point in the video when Anderson sort of is talking about their early days of recording, and talking about a couple contemporary artists that they were playing alongside. In this case, I'll let the video tell the story. So let me go ahead and get that pulled up. Make sure to remember to unmute yourself when it comes up. First thing I need to do, though, is jump to the right time code. So I'm going to mute it for a second.
RockOnDigital.com.
Okay, I'm looking for 1720. And almost there.
Whoa!
Here we go. And
then we got a few more gigs, and we eventually went across briefly to the West Coast to do a few shows. We actually did a show, and sadly I can remember nothing whatsoever about it, because we probably were whisked off as soon as we came off stage to go to some radio station and plead our case with a local FM radio station. And so I never got to see Captain Beefheart and his magic band and Frank Zappa on the same bill with Jethro Tull. What a bummer.
So, what was the album that really broke you in America?
Well, it really didn't happen. I mean, by the time Benefit came out, it was, that was 1970, and so it wasn't a monster success. But by that point, on our second tour, our second year, we were already kind of established a bit, to the point where we were able to go and be a headline act in some theaters. But on the first tour, it was really just getting what we could. I mean, we I think opened for the MC5, who were the prototype of everything that became punk, some 6 years later. The MC5, famous as they were for their slogan, "Kick out the jams, mother XXXXX."
Yeah.
And the fact that their bass player contrived, with amazing physiological accuracy, to take a dump live on stage into a bucket at the same moment in the same song, night after night. I mean, this is mind over the worst kind of matter. He really did. I mean, he really took a dump as part of their show, and they were incredibly nasty people. But of course, off stage they were pussycats, and became, at least a couple of them became Jethro Tull fans and would come and see us in subsequent years after poor old MC5 were long forgotten. I'm not sure that the bass player or the bucket survived terribly long, but the lead singer was a bit of a fan, and he came to see us a couple of times. But
okay, I'm going to pause it right there. First of all, I found that fascinating. That
MC5, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ian Anderson opening for the MC5. How do you get two completely different acts? Because the MC5, that's proto-punk at its most hardcore, and then...
Well, I can explain this to you perfectly, in that, everything... It was the late 60s. I know Benefit was 1970, but,
right.
Think about Woodstock. You have all these hippies that are like, I like this band, I like this band. Everybody's together, everybody's loving. It's a big melting pot of different bands and sounds. I'm sure it was, very hip to mesh different bands on different bills. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's kind of fascinating, because, opening acts nowadays with live shows, usually they try to find something relatively close to what, artist is being played, unless, occasionally you'll have, your Jack White, for instance. He often tours with unusual people, but that's just kind of the way he is. It's really interesting, though, to see a commercial act. I guess you wouldn't call the MC5 commercial by any means, but an act that was on their way up, such as the MC5, and they never quite made it to the top, mostly because of their own dedication to just being... Well, like Ian Anderson said, they took a shit on stage on the show. That was part of the act, which is quite amazing. I have to say, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit play on the video again because he's about to name check another artist.
Okay.
By the time we got to the Benefit album in '60 and '70, then we were doing a few headline things, and we'd been Led Zeppelin's opening acts, I think, in the middle of '69. So by 1970, although we did continue to do a few shows with Zeppelin in I think '70, '71 period, they were still they were always that bit ahead of us, and we probably caught up briefly in the 72, 73, 74 period, and then of course they stopped. But Zeppelin and Tull were very competitive, and it was I always had the feeling they didn't like us much, and they probably felt that too. Although I always got on fine with John Bonham and with Jimmy Page, but Robert Plant and I seem to have had some there was just some kind of animal sense of not quite getting on. We were civil to each other, but.
I'm actually going to pause it here. This is a good place to stop. He goes into a different explanation in this video. He doesn't really explain it, but in an interview on the bonus disc, or the bonus tracks for the Aqualung album, Ian Anderson gives his theory that Led Zeppelin might not have, that Robert Plant in particular might not have appreciated his comments about the lyrics of Led Zeppelin. In basically what happened is Ian Anderson said that in an interview, when asked about the lyrics of Led Zeppelin and how they compare to his lyrics, he said, well, if we had the musicians of Led Zeppelin and the lyrics of Jethro Tull, that would make a heck of a band. And so his prediction was basically that Robert Plant probably read that and just never quite forgave him for a quote like that, which he then in that interview admits it was a bit of a youthful indiscretion to make such a shitty comment about someone's lyric writing.
There's a clip somewhere out there of Pete Townsend talking about the Beatles, specifically when the Beatles started making all their records in stereo.
Mm-hmm.
Pete says, he's like, John and I were listening to a Beatle record the other day where the backing track comes out of one speaker and the voices come out of the other. If you took away those voices and just had the backing track, it's fucking terrible.
Well, to be fair, the Beatles are not virtuoso musicians. George is probably the best musician of the bunch, and even he as a guitarist, he was far from Robert Plant as far as guitar work. Or not Robert Plant, sorry, Jimmy Page. Jesus, that's a gaffe. But far from Jimmy Page as far as playing guitar. I would say maybe Robert Plant could play guitar about as well. Who knows? No, that's being harsh. Because I don't think Plant ever learned, did he?
I'm sure he knows enough. Like, yes, I'm sure he can play guitar.
I guess it's just that my familiarity with Robert Plant's solo work is mostly vocal-based. I don't remember him actually seeing him play any instruments. I could be wrong, and please, if you're listening to this podcast, correct me. I have one more video to play prior to the album, and that is I'm going to play a little bit of a solo. Upon Mick Abraham's departure from Jethro Tull, and you know what, actually, I take it back. I'm going to go ahead and play both of these videos first. Not the whole videos, but just some clips, because they kind of tie into each other. Mick Abrahams was the original guitarist of Tull, and he left and did not record on their second album, Stand Up. He was replaced by Martin Bear, and Martin Bear is a guitarist greatly different in style from that of Mick Abrahams. And with that, I'm going to reverse the order that I had this originally set to do. Mick Abrahams departed to do his own band called Bloodwind Pig. And I'm going to actually give you guys a little glimpse of their 1970 performance on Top of the Pops. So as Jethro Tull was playing, it was going off onto their own tangent. This is what Mick Abrahams was doing.
When he walked through the door, said he was my kin.
That's kind of weird. Why is he standing behind the drummer?
After all, it's not a sin.
That's a very good question. I do know that Mick Abrahams was known for not being a very stage-friendly person.
Oh, okay.
Same old
So as you can see from this video, Bloodwind Pig was definitely going for more of a blues jazz kind of fusion sound than the folk influence, and they even included a saxophone in it. And if you listen to the album, their first album, A Head Rings Out, there's a whole horn section on a few songs. Now, as to why he's standing behind the drums, my understanding is that Mick Abrahams, for one thing, part of the reason he left Tull, or was fired, depending on who you ask, it was he didn't even want to tour. He didn't want to move too far beyond Great Britain. And that's...
well, I was going to say, depending on who you ask, what does Anderson have to say?
Well, Anderson said that he didn't want to tour. Abrahams doesn't really do a lot of interviews. I tried to find some interviews of him talking, and there's very little information that I could find with him talking about it. And the one video that I did find was kind of a really poor quality one, and he didn't really talk about the breakup itself. But different members of Tull, like Martin Bear, for instance, has told the story in a different way. Mm-hmm. But anyway, as he departed as lead guitarist, Martin Bear took over, and here's a little glimpse of him as a guitar player on stage.
Does not sound like Jethro Tull at all.
This is recorded in a 1970s concert. I'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit to later in the performance. Fast forward again. Here we go. This is the part I wanted to show. So anyway, what you get from this is that, and this was from 1970. This was, right as Benefit was coming out. This is a clip from a live performance that they did at the Tanglewood Theater, and in this performance, the entire last 10 minutes of the performance was Martin Bear on stage, just blasting away on guitar, while a few other members will, chime in every now and then with drums and such. And as far as I can tell in the performance, Ian Anderson just kind of left the stage and let him do his thing. Okay, let me hear your thoughts.
We were doing a Kiss and Tell episode where we were talking about Peter Criss doing a drum solo, and I brought up Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who don't know, the song Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin is, for all intents and purposes, an extended drum solo.
Right.
And they would very often close out their shows with it because all the other members of the band were ready to get the hell off stage.
And so it gave the drummer a chance to shine, while at the same time the rest of them, they wanted to go, well, in the case of Led Zeppelin, they wanted to go smoke some weed.
Yes, this is what that reminds me of. They're like, hey, just fucking play. We'll come out sometimes, maybe.
I think the main reason I wanted to put this video here to show a little bit of the music is because Martin Bear was a distinctly different guitarist from that of Mick Abrahams, who, while a solid blues guitarist, as far as like doing hard rock soloing, it wasn't really his forte. And oh geez, the sun's shining right on my face now.
We got sun, we got lawnmowers, we just got fucking distractions up the wazoo today.
Yeah, is that a lawnmower on your side?
Yep.
Well, apologies for the sound issues. I am going to make a quick movement over here to get my face out of the sun.
Right.
For those listening, we do apologize for the sudden sound issue. So without further ado, though, we've reached the point where we're going to start talking about the album itself. Now, Benefit, when it came out, it was released on April 20th of 1970 in the U.S. and May 1st in the U.K. So it actually came out in the U.S. first, which is kind of a sign of the previous album's kind of hint at commercial success in the U.S. They decided to give it a U.S. release first. The first song on the album is With You There to Help Me, which is my personal favorite song on the album. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. I enjoy this album quite thoroughly, and we'll get into that, but this first song, I think, really hits hard, and time to play it.
In tears of peace, sweet smelling summer nights of wine and song, dusty pavements, burning feet. Why am I crying? I want to know. How can I smile and make it right? For 60 days and 80 nights, and not give in and lose the fight. Going back to the ones that I know, with whom I can be what I want to be. Just 1 week are the feelings ago, and with you that do help me, and then it probably will.
So this song starts off with kind of a neat little psychedelic build-up with some really the lyrics at the beginning and the way they're sung almost give me the chills because it's a little eerie. And then it builds up with the electric guitar comes in by the second verse, and then you get a nice little mini solo right after the end of the second verse that goes directly into the refrain. Mm-hmm. And the lyrics of this song, really, it took me a few times of listening to it and then rereading the lyrics to fully grasp the meaning. I'll go ahead and just read the first verse. In days of peace, sweet-smelling summer nights of wine and song, dusty pavements, burning feet. Why am I crying? I want to know. How can I smile and make it right for 60 days and 80 nights and not give in and lose the fight? And then the refrain of the song, I'm going back to the ones that I know with whom I can be what I want to be. Just one week for the feeling to go, and with you there to help me, then it probably will. Now, at first you may not be fully grasping the meaning of this, but with a little bit of time, and of course the context of knowing that at this point, this is when Tull had been touring pretty much endlessly since 1968. So it'd been 3 years solid. 2 years solid with them touring. The song really is about homesickness. He's saying the first verse of it, in where he's talking about days of peace, and why is he crying? The fact is he's pining for home. He's looking to go back to people whom he remembers and who he grew up with. As far as songs about road weariness, I don't think there's been a song that I can come up with off the top of my head that has more tender emotion, and yet just the heavy electric guitar attack that blasts in kind of hits the hammer home for me. What do you think? Am I?
No, you're spot on. I mean, the composition is really. I was going to say admirable, but it is. It's admirable, but I mean, I'm looking for a better adjective that's just totally eluding me. The composition on this song is really well done. It builds, and then it payoffs the building, which, I mean, there's nothing worse than a song that just builds to nothing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A song that feels like it's all build up, and then when you actually get there, you're disappointed with the result.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
you do not get that here.
Right. This is a song that pays off, and it's a really ballsy move to lead your album off with something like this. But I think it's a powerful statement that really. I think this is the first hint that Tull is really moving into territory where the lyricism is going beyond just telling stories of love, which, I mean, they had a few of those on their previous albums, but not, they would always come back to it. And this album really doesn't have any songs that are straight up about love.
I love the fact that the melody is in a minor key. You used the word eerie to describe it earlier, and it does very much have that feel to it.
Mm-hmm. And the next song on the album, we'll go ahead and move on to that. Nothing to Say has kind of an equally minor key kind of approach in a different kind of way, though, in that it begins with a little bit of a bit of a hard rock opening, and then kind of moves on from there into weariness.
Mm-hmm.
Every day there's someone asking, what is there to do? Should I laugh or should I fight? Is it all the same to you? No, I say I had the answer proven to be true. But if I were to share it with you, you would stand to gain and I'd lose. Oh, I couldn't bear it, so I've got nothing to say.
This sounds a lot like what Aqualung would end up sounding like ultimately.
Yeah, this one is whereas the previous song on the album, With You There to Help Me, still very much was seated within the psychedelic rock genre. I would say this song changes things up a little bit and goes into very much closer to that kind of Aqualung territory that you would expect, where the theatricality is there, where it almost seems like a song that's sung from the pulpit of a church or something.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the lyrics are intriguing in that respect, in that the song begins with him saying, "Every day there's someone asking, what is there to do? Should I love or should I fight? Is it all the same to you?" This was Ian Anderson kind of going into sort of the same territory Bob Dylan did with his song "It Ain't Me, Babe," in that it's a song about people coming up to him and saying, do you have the answers? And
Leonard Skinner's "I Ain't the One."
Right, exactly. Are you a prophet? And they keep asking him questions, and he says here in the next verse, "No, I say, I have the answer, proven to be true, but if I were to share it with you, you would stand to gain and I to lose," which is basically, to me, it's Anderson saying, even if he knows some of the answers that he's being asked, he's not going to say it, he's not going to share it with him, because he doesn't have all of the answers, or even most of the answers.
I think the real reason is because you got to buy the record.
Oh yeah,
You got to listen to those lyrics. Spin that baby backwards. Get the devil going.
Yeah. Bring me on. Turn me on, dead man. Turn me on.
I buried Paul.
Or my favorite is still, though, from Electric Light Orchestra, the song "Fire on High" begins with some backwards voice, and if you reverse it, literally the voice says, "The music is reversible." And they did it specifically to fuck with people. And I think he said, I think the full phrase is, "The music is reversible, time is not," and then it keeps going, "Turn back, turn back." Which is basically telling the audience, stop wasting your time with reversing albums.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense, since ELL definitely kind of went for that Beatlesque pop kind of sound, but with more of a 70s groove.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that said, the next song, "Alive and Well" and "Living In," is kind of a interesting change of pace. Piano-driven.
Nobody sees her here, her eyes are slowly closing. If she should want some peace, she sits there without moving.
Worth noting, this is the only song on the album that's about a woman.
No, about a bone. And if she feels like dancing, no one will know it. Giving herself a chance, there's no need to show her how it should be.
So this song, and I stopped it before it's going off on, a nice flute solo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and read the entire lyrics of the song, because it's really just two short verses. "Nobody sees her here, her eyes are slowly closing. If she should want some peace, she sits there without moving, and puts a pillow over the phone. And if she feels like dancing, no one will know it. Giving herself a chance, there's no need to show her how it should be. She can't remember now when she was all in pieces. She's quite content to sit there listening to what he says, how he didn't like to be alone. And if he feels like crying, she's there to hear him. No reason to complain and nothing to fear. They always will be." This is the closest thing to a love song that this album has, and it's not really about love, though. Any ideas from those lyrics what you think he's going for?
No.
This one, again, took me some time to work out, but with a little bit of help from reading the lyrics, and then actually I Googled around a bit, because it's kind of, there's a lot of imagery here, and it's hard to disseminate on my own. Someone actually actually was talking about having actually interviewed Ian Anderson about it. And the song was actually written from the point of view of his girlfriend at the time, and how they had a bit of a rocky relationship in the past, but at the time the song was written, she seemed to be at that stage in a relationship where she knows that it's not a perfect match, but she's settled into sort of a contentment, sort of a period where she seems happy enough to go along with things, but not enough that that this is ever going to be a permanent fixture.
The fear of all women having to settle.
well, and that's the thing. So it's a song about a woman who's realized that she may not be in a perfect situation, but for the time being at least, she can focus on the present, which is a fairly pleasant place to be.
And she told them to play in doubly.
That's true. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. The only song on this album that's about love is kind of it's not about love on the rocks. It's not about
it's actually kind of by the other side of the coin. It's about fading love. It's about dying love.
Dying love, but
from what you've just described to me, that situation, like there's no scenario where that situation plays out in Ian Anderson's favor.
Right, yeah, it's not exactly a situation that's going to end well.
Yeah.
But for the time being, it's livable. And that's what's interesting. It's a very realistic expectations kind of song.
They're doing this thing on this track where they like mesh the different instruments with the piano, and they have that one melody going. That's probably my favorite part of the song. I really like that. It reminds me of this instrumental like Brazilian track from actually recorded around the same time in like '68.
Mm-hmm.
Forget what it's called. I think the band's called Cortex.
Well, let me go ahead and play a little bit more of the song because we're about to get a little bit of instrumental elements.
Yeah, this right here that they're doing, that's nice.
She can't remember now when she was all in pieces.
In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Vince Guaraldi trio.
Listening to what he
like the Peanuts theme.
Yeah, there you go.
I would like to be alone.
Also when the electric guitar comes in, of course.
And if he feels like crying, she's that tough. No reason to complain, there's nothing to fear, they always will be.
Anyway, this song really presupposes Aqualung in even a bigger way than Nothing to Say, and that it really has that kind of that prog element where it begins with the music playing one way, and then it kind of breaks down into almost a jazzier piece, and the time signatures start to change. Really, it's an early prog song, and this is.
Oh, that was my bad. Sorry.
Did you mute me or something?
I added a video to the playlist, not realizing it would do that. Sorry.
Ah, okay. Well, sorry about that hiccup. For those of you who are watching or listening, you're probably a little confused about why the sound dropped out. But that said, we're going to move on to the next song, Sun. Sun is interesting. I don't know much about Ian Anderson's past and him basically growing up and how his family was, but this song kind of hints at it, and so I'm going to let you think about it as you listen.
Sympathy, be grateful, my son, for what you get. Expression and passion. is for watching the sunset. When I was your age, amusement we made for ourselves. Permission to breathe, sir. Don't talk like that, I'm your man. There'll soon be the mob, son, so join up as soon as you can. You can borrow that, 'cause that's for the races and doesn't grow on trees. I only feel.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. That first verse is incredibly... I mean, when you hear it and you think about the lyrics, it's incredibly vivid. What did you get out of it? Just from... without reading the lyrics.
It's actually, I'm not too fond of it, honestly. It runs together a little bit with the overall sound on the album as a whole. Just because, like, this whole album to me feels very transitional from that first phase over to the next phase.
And I will agree, this song is probably not one of the highlights of the album overall in terms of the musicality. It's pretty much insular in that respect, but the lyrics kind of... I honestly hadn't read the lyrics on this or given them too much thought until just today, setting up this podcast. But the song is a very personal, kind of autobiographical song in a way. At least that's how it feels to me. I wonder if Ian Anderson had a bit of a rough childhood, because well, let me go ahead and read this. The first verse. Oh, I feel sympathy. Be grateful, my son, for what you get. Expression and passion, 10 days for watching the sunset. When I was your age, amusement we made for ourselves. Permission to breathe, sir. Don't talk like that. I'm your old man. They'll soon be demobbed, son, so join up as soon as you can. You can't borrow that, because that's for the races and doesn't grow on trees. And then the final verse of the song is just as powerful. The final verse is, you've only turned 30, so son, you'd better apologize. And when you grow up, if you're good, we will buy you a bike. This is a song about a very spiteful father who is talking basically, talking down to his 30-year-old son or 20-something son who's about to turn 30, or has just turned, rather, 30 years old. And basically, this is kind of him... This is Ian Anderson kind of making fun of his dad. At least that's what I get out of it. Especially the way he sings it, where it's very, mocking. Every lyric is, oh, I feel sympathy, I can't do his voice, so I won't attempt. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Musically, the song kind of runs together, and it's not particularly memorable, but now that I've read the lyrics, I'm going to give this song a definite pass as a worthy addition to the album. It doesn't really fit anywhere else in on their other albums, so this next song, though, is one of the more psychedelic songs on the album in the way it's performed, and I actually really dig it, especially the meaning behind it. For Michael Collins, Jeffrey, and me. And yes, there's Jeffrey again.
Watery eyes of the last sighing seconds, blue reflections mute and dim, beckon tearful child of wonder to repentance of the sin, and the blind and lusty lovers of the great eternal light go on believing leaving nothing. Since something has to die, and the ape's curiosity, money, power wins, and the yellow soft mountains move under hay.
And this is where the song really gets great for me.
I'm with you, land, though it's a shame that it had to be you. The mother ship is just a blade from your trade made for you. I'm with you, boy, so please employ just a little extra. It's on my mind, I'm left behind when I should have left. Walking away.
Now, from the title of the song, do you have any hints as to what the song might be about, Bill?
It's called
Michael
No,
Collins.
I don't know who any of these people are.
Well, Jeffrey is Jeffrey Hammond, who is a member of Jethro Tull. Actually, not yet. He would join unofficially in 1970 and then officially with Aqualung.
Right.
But he was a close friend of Ian Anderson's. Actually, what the first name on it is the biggest giveaway. Some people automatically assume by Michael Collins and the fact that Ian Anderson is British that the song might have been, and this is in hindsight, might have been about I believe Michael Collins was like an IRA member from like
Right.
yeah. But that's not the truth, because this song was written. Yeah, I was right. He was an Irish leader. I actually think he might have lived before, or well, helped to organize the IRA. I just have to look it up. But no, it's actually this song was written in 1969, came out in 70. Michael Collins, in that time, was a name much more closely associated with the Apollo 11, which in 1969. This was in 1969. This was a very notable thing in that. I'm sorry, I just got distracted by something.
It happens.
Excuse me. Where was I? Oh, Michael Collins. Michael Collins was a member of Apollo 11, and he was famously the third astronaut, meaning he was the astronaut who had to sit in the LEM module, which did not land on the moon. So whereas Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are names that are instantly memorable to most people because they're the first ones who actually walked on the moon, Michael Collins is kind of forgotten to history. I mean, his name comes up, but never as accomplishing anything really, which is unfortunate considering he was the person who kept those two safe by being up there and ready, with the rescue module. And the song is told from the perspective of actually Ian Anderson and his friend Jeffrey Hammond watching the moon landing and thinking Michael Collins is kind of in the same position as the rest of the world. They're watching history get made, even though he's got arguably a better seat.
Well, okay. If you look at it that way, yeah. I mean, you could look at it as it could be like an envious thing or a jealous thing of like, why wasn't he the one? He's right there.
Oh, and that's exactly it. He says specifically, I'll read the refrain of the song. I'm with you, Lem, though it's a shame that it had to be you. The mothership is just a blip. The mothership being where Michael Collins is. From your trip made for two. I'm with you, boys, so please employ just a little extra care. It's on my mind I'm left behind when I should have been there, walking with you.
Now, how often does space come up in their lyricism? Not too often, right?
Not too often, but you know what? This was 1969. I think it was in vogue. I mean, Space Oddity came out literally weeks before the men walked on the moon.
Right.
And so this song came out in 1970, just after all of that happened. And so it's not a very common theme for Ian Anderson to explore. Normally, he's all about the countryside and writing
medieval shit.
Yeah, medieval stuff in particular. Yeah. But I'm actually, this is kind of an unusual enigma for me. I mean, because he normally doesn't cover that material.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, either way, I like the song quite a bit, especially the way it begins with that, slow acoustic build, and then the nice psychedelic rock breakdown. It doesn't sound like Tull would become. It's certainly an older style Tull song, but it's interesting, and I like going into the history of it too, because just the idea of considering that if you were someone who you were picked, you were one of only 3 people who were going on a mission, and this mission's destination was to put the first 2 people on the moon, and so you are one of the chosen few, but not quite, because you're chosen, but you're also not getting the privilege of being one of the first people to walk on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what you get is to be always known as the other guy. Because, I mean, I'm sure when you heard Neil Armstrong, you know who Neil Armstrong is. And most people know Buzz Aldrin's name, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just because Buzz is a name that's pretty easy to remember.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael Collins, people are, especially, I guess, with his association with also the name being an IRA leader, people get confused, and they don't, I've heard that name somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So the next song on our list, To Cry You a Song.
Oh.
Flying so high, trying to remember how many cigarettes did I bring along?
It's a real, like, Mozart kind of thing going on with that guitar.
When I get down, I'll jump in a taxi cab, riding through London town to cry you a song.
Alright, let's take this in pieces. That first verse is part of the reason this song is often confused for a drug song. And this is something which Ian Anderson has said in interviews since then, that he, to this day, has never smoked weed or done drugs of any kind. Possibly alcohol, but I've never heard him say yay or nay there. So either way, probably not in large quantities. But that's besides the point. The point being, this is very much, and what's intriguing about it, this song is not. It's actually just a simple song about being road weary and tired of touring. But let's read this verse. Flying so high, trying to remember how many cigarettes did I bring along. When I get down, I'll jump in a taxi cab, driving through London town to cry you a song. And I think it's the word flying so high.
That's it, yeah, like, because it's just like people heard that and then forgot. Like, there's more to the song.
Right, exactly. Then let's go further in.
It's been a long time, still shaking my wings. But I'm a blackbird, I got changes to ring.
I really love the instrumental breakdown in this track.
There's some really unique guitar work going on throughout the whole song.
You're right, very reminiscent of classical music.
If Trans-Siberian Orchestra sounded like this, I wouldn't think they were fucking terrible.
Hold on. Let's address that a second. Couldn't you technically say that about anything? Like, listen to any band that you like and say, all right, if Miley Cyrus sounded like this, I wouldn't think she was terrible.
No. Because Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like they play classical compositions, but with guitars and shit, right?
They do, and they use a heavy amount of what I like to call 80s style synth.
Oh my god, dude, I do not like that stuff.
Synthesizer, for me, it kind of peaked in the 70s.
Well, I like synthesizer. I think it's more I really am not on board. And it's difficult to explain, and I'll give you an example of why it is difficult to explain. The song Drive by R.E.M.
Mm-hmm.
Acoustic guitar and an orchestra. I like that. I can get behind that. S&M, where Metallica plays their songs with an orchestra. Anytime where it's like, we're going to play our songs with an orchestra. I fucking hate that stuff.
Well, I know that that hasn't always worked. I mean, of course, I'm a huge fan of the Moody Blues album, Days of Future Past, which is basically a rock and roll orchestrated piece. Mm-hmm. But if you then take a song that's not meant to be given orchestra and then you throw orchestra on it, you're right. I think sometimes it will work, but it's not easy to do right. It's very easy to do wrong and make
I've never seen it done well enough for me to give a shit as a whole, because like it's been done so many times. Even Kiss has a fucking album with a symphony.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm pretty sure Jethro Tull, or at least Ian Anderson, might have the Blank Symphony Orchestra Plays Tull kind of album. I've not heard it, so I can't speak to it. I will say, when it's done right, is like cover band stuff like Apocalyptica. Is it Apocalyptica or something like that? That's it's like a 3-cello band that plays Metallica songs just from cello.
Well, see, that's different. I mean, like, when you get the whole orchestra sound to it.
I understand.
Yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, that's fine. We're actually nearly done with this album, and then we'll have a couple singles to cover. But To Cry You a Song, needless to say, I think is a pretty decent track. I'm not going to analyze the lyrics much further because it's really just about road weariness. And something you'll notice about the end of this album, a lot of these songs follow that same tune. Mm-hmm. In fact, this next song, For Everything.
Once it seemed there would always be that time for everything. Ages passed, I knew at last my life had never been. I've been missing what
the bass sounds really high up in the mix.
It is.
I think I've ever heard a Tull song with the bass that high up in the mix.
Particularly when we get into later Tull stuff from the mid to late 70s, they definitely amped up the bass on some of the tracks.
50 years and I'm filled with tears.
I'm gonna go ahead and fade out with this. This song is not one of my favorites on the album. I do think lyrically it's kind of interesting, but it's also incredibly short. It's even shorter than the one I read earlier. I will read the entire, all the lyrics right here. Once it seemed there would always be a time for everything. Ages passed, and I knew at last my life had never been. I'd been missing what time could bring. 50 years, and I'm filled with tears and joys. I never cried. Burn the wagon and chain the mule. The past is all denied. There's no time for everything. No time for everything. That's it. Once again, the song kind of is about road weariness, but in this case, it's almost from the perspective of an aging musician, which intrigues me. It's sort of from the perspective of, kind of profound for a 20-something singer. It's from the perspective of an older person who has seen a lot in his life, but has not seen everything, and has to come to terms with the fact that he's never going to live to see everything.
Right, okay.
Which is kind of an interesting concept.
Bucket list, dude.
Yeah, bucket, exactly. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, from musically, it's kind of, this song is one that's easily forgettable, I think, on the album. It's not bad, you know. I mean, it's one that if you're listening to the album from beginning to end, you will go through it. You won't skip over it. It's not, you know, a terrible song or anything.
Yeah, none of these songs are terrible. I think the tracks that I am not so keen on, it'll basically just be that it doesn't stand out enough from the Jethro Tull sound. Like a few songs on here, I'm just like, this is a Jethro Tull song. This is what Jethro Tull sounds like.
Yeah, the second half of this in particular, from To Cry You a Song on, the songs are less consistent. Here's another example. This is probably one of the better ones, but it's still...
All the places I've been make it hard to begin to enjoy life again on the inside, but I mean to.
So already, this song is about being weary and having gone to a lot of places and having to enjoy the smaller things.
Make a that I've got me some time to be in from the side and inside you.
I'm actually going to go ahead and just stop it right there. The song doesn't change things up very much. As a single piece, this song is not bad. But the problem is it's matched up against, so far this is 3 songs in a row that are about a person who's been touring for a long time and is kind of tired. And so I think it's a matter of sameness, where if you put too many of these in a row, it starts to hamper the sound of the album. Because actually this song stands out a lot more outside of the context of the album. I first heard this song actually on the compilation Living in the Past, which is a compilation of songs from their first 3 albums. And it's, you know, I think it worked fine there because it was mixed up a bit. But yeah, I don't really have much to say other than that on this one. So we'll go on to move to the next song, Play in Time.
Right off the bat, this is like taking that, like I said, that defined Tull sound. It's kind of tweaking it. It's giving it something. Like here's a weird flute thing you can play. It doesn't feel so by the numbers, is what I'm getting at.
Taking what I can.
Oh, yeah, they sound pissed.
Must be done. while I do some thinking.
Sounding like Deep Purple.
Sleeping is hard to come by, so we'll all sit down and try to play in time. And we feel like singing, talking to people in my way. Talking to people in my way. Blues was my favorite color, till I looked around and found another song. I felt like singing, trying so hard to replay what must be played, what must be sung, and it's what I'm singing. Talking to people in my way. Talking to people in my way.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Now, this song is really fascinating, actually. When you consider what it's about, this song is actually... This is Ian Anderson addressing fans of the first Toll album, because fans of the first Toll album got from them that they're kind of a bluesy rock band, and they wanted more of the blues rock. Well, this song explicitly is him saying, that's not what we're about anymore. Let me go ahead and read the lyrics. Got to take in what I can. There's no time to do what must be done. While I do some thinking, sleeping is hard to come by. So we'll all sit down and play and try to play in time, and we feel like singing, talking to people in my way. And the second verse is where it gets interesting. Blues were my favorite color, till I looked around and found another song that I felt like singing, trying so hard to reach you, playing what must be played, what must be sung. It's what I'm singing, talking to people in my way.
They definitely took some influence from MC5 there. There's a real distinct, like, punky metal thing going on in this song.
Yeah, in the hard guitar approach of it, certainly. And let's listen to a little bit more of the music. A lot of sonic weirdness thrown in. So this song is a really nice and welcome burst of energy to the album, I think, because it really changes things up. You're right, there is a little bit more of a punk angle to it.
It's aggressive.
Yeah, in the aggressiveness. It's not, it's not a punk song, but it has some elements that would later be co-opted, I would say.
Well, for Tull, it's a punk song.
Yes, right, exactly. Although we will get into a little bit later, Tull flirted with a couple songs later on that could even further explore that. We have one more song on this album to talk about, Saucity, You're a Woman. And this is the hardest song on the entire album for me to figure out what it's about. But finally, I think I got a hang on it of it, so let's go ahead and play.
Hello, you straight-laced lady, dressed in white, but your shoes aren't clean. Painted them up with polish, in the hope we can see where you've been. The smiling face that you've worn to greet me rising and morning. Send me out over for my score. Please me and say what for. Give me the straight-laced promise and not the pathetic lie. Tie me down with your ribbons and suck when I ask you why. Your Sunday paper voiced cries, demanding truths I denied. The bittersweet kiss you pretended is offered our repairment. Society, you're a woman. Society, you're a woman.
Okay.
You got me. I was. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Well, Ian Anderson is known for being
Abstract.
abstract, and he gets even more so later on. I mean, talking about Thick as a Brick. I mean, that's probably going to be the hardest for us to talk about, which is why I'm planning something kind of big for it. But with that said, the way the song is told, it's about a woman, but it's not a song about love. It's kind of mocking. Let me go ahead and read the first verse again. Hello, you straight-faced lady, dressed in white, but your shoes aren't clean. Painted them up with polish in the hopes that we can't see where you've been. The smiling face that you've worn to greet me rising at morning sent me out to work for my score. Please me and say what it's for. Give me the straight-laced promise and not the pathetic lie. So he's kind of mocking this person. And then mocking this person while he's also essentially dating her. But I don't think this song's about love or about a woman, like an actual woman, because the refrain of the song is society, you're a woman. Society, you're a woman. I think society is a name that he's given, and this is where I'm going to get a little abstract. He's using this character society to describe basically, and with the refrain changing society to society, where I'm thinking society is like a pretentious woman. That's kind of what I'm getting from it, and I could be wrong, but it seems to be like society is the physical embodiment of modern society. Where, I mean, that first sentence there, a straight-laced lady dressed in white, but with shoes that are not clean. So that's someone who's trying to make a good impression on people.
Wait a minute. Time out. Dressed in white.
Yes.
Isn't that like a virginal thing? Shoes are dirty, so like...
Mm-hmm.
Is he calling her a whore?
See, that's the thing. I think he's saying whoever the woman in this is, whether it's an actual woman or an abstract concept, you're right in a way. This is a woman who is kind of pretending to be something she's not. She's trying to make a fresh impression, a clean impression, but she's been kind of through the ringer one way or another. The second verse, Tie me down with your ribbons and sulk when I ask you why. Your Sunday paper voice cries, demanding truths I deny. The bittersweet kiss you pretended is offered, our affair mended.
That's a good band name, Fresh Impression.
Yeah. But, and then the last verse, which we didn't get to in the song, all of the tears you're wasting are for yourself and not for me. It's sad to know you're aging, sadder still to admit I'm free. Your immature physical toy has grown, too young to enjoy. At last, your straight-laced agreement. Woman, you were too old for me. So that's where I start to wonder, is he saying that he's outgrown polite society, that he doesn't like that, you know, he doesn't like people who are putting on airs as being better than anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Or
I don't know.
see, that's the thing. I'm still not sure I've tied down this song.
Well, I thought I had it, and then that last verse threw me off completely. So
Right. I've tried. I even went to songmeanings.com. Tried to read that, and no one there seemed to have any freaking clue either. Either way, it's fascinating, and the way the song's played out, I like the musical approach to it, too. It's an interesting way to end the album, though, with a song that's just beyond the pale. I mean, much like some Bob Dylan songs, where you're like, there seems to be meaning in this, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Unlike some of those, like, Bob Dylan's Tombstone Blues, there's a lot of imagery in that song, but I don't think there's a single person who has ever figured out what that song's actually about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's probably a nonsense lyrics. That's really ultimately what it is. I mean, well, I guess I may as well, since I brought it up, read the lyrics. The bit of the song that always gets me. Let's see. Here we go. All right, Tombstone Blues. The second part of it. Well, John the Baptist, after torturing a thief, looks up at his hero, the commander-in-chief, saying, "Tell me, great hero, but please make it brief. Is there a hole for me to get sick in?" The commander-in-chief answers him while chasing a fly, saying, "Death to all those who would whimper and cry." And dropping a barbell, he points to the sky, saying, "The sun's not yellow, it's chicken."
Yeah, I know the song. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. It's fun. The lyricism in it is really fun to play around with. I really enjoy that song. But unlike that, this song clearly has a point to it. I just haven't sussed it out. So anyway, we're now going to explore a couple of the singles and B-sides that came out around this time. We already covered Witch's Promise at the beginning. So I have just 3 others. Singing All Day, which I believe was the B-side to Witch's Promise.
I haven't heard any of these, so these will be fresh ears. Fresh impression.
Singing all day, singing about nothing, singing all day, singing about nothing.
And been through the desert on a horse with no name.
My, oh my. Went down to the station,
Take it back, this was not the B-side to Witch's Promise, but it was released at the same time.
flames of her hair, nothing to see, but the crowds keep staring at me, my. Oh my. Down in the street, trying to remember, shopping out.
Long guitar. Holy shit.
Where's that her in the fur coat? No, it's not December yet, my. Ooh, my. singing of thee, singing about nothing. Back to the house, maybe she'll phone me, singing my songs, feeling so lonely. I sing very softly, so if the phone rings, I can hear it.
Okay, so you've pretty much gotten the idea of this song. This song is interesting in that it really doesn't sound like anything that they've done before or really since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it's necessarily one of my favorite songs, but it's an interesting change of pace. And as a bonus track on the CD, by the way, which it comes in, I actually thought that this was part of the album for a while, because the one problem I have with CD bonus tracks is they don't always give you a clear understanding of when the album ends.
Yes, that's true.
Sometimes they do, but what I do actually now, I've taken to taking those songs like on iTunes and splitting them up and making them their own album, sort of making my own compilation for bonus tracks. Right. But lyrically, it's kind of this is another song with lyrics that are kind of interesting. Let me go ahead and first it repeats 3 times, singing all day, singing about nothing. Then the next verse, went down to the station to look for her there, looked through the crowds for a glimpse of her hair. Nothing to see but the crowds keep staring at me. Oh my. Down in the street, trying to remember, shuffling my feet outside menswear. Is that her in her fur coat? No, it's not December yet. Oh my.
This is starting to remind me of the lyrics of Tombstone Blues.
Yeah, and then the last verse, back to the house, maybe she'll phone me, singing my song, feeling so lonely. I'll sing very softly, so if the phone rings, I can hear it. So, it's, unlike Tombstone Blues, there is actually kind of a point to it, but it's kind of a little esoteric. It's, kind of about this is a love song, which is something that didn't happen on the rest of the album. It's about a man who's looking for this woman that he clearly is at least a crush on. Maybe more than a crush, because he's hoping that she'll phone him.
Do you think somebody pressured him into writing this song? Like, you need to write a romantic song.
Possibly. And in fact, actually, the UK version and the US version of this album had different track listings. And
that's always a pain in the ass.
Right. This song didn't make it on either one, though.
Fuck you, Rolling Stones. Give me a goddamn definitive release.
I agree with you, by the way. The version of the album we listened to, what they decided with Jethro Tull was to go ahead and accept the UK version as the definitive version.
I mean, if it's a British band, that's usually what you do.
There are some exceptions people will take. Some people will argue, for instance, that the British version of Rubber Soul is more cohesive of an album than that the American version, rather, of Rubber Soul is more cohesive of an album. But that's because it omits songs like Drive My Car, which don't fit in with kind of the folksy aspect of the rest of the album. I don't know. I heard the UK version first, so...
Yeah, I can't agree with that. I like Rubber Soul as a whole.
So anyway, the next song we have is called Just Trying to Be.
There was a time when you were so young and walked in that way. They made you feel they loved you, all seeing they say you're going wrong if that game you don't play, and that the song I sing will lead you astray. I'm feel lonely, rejection. Unknowing, know you're going wrong. can't see that we're just trying to be not what we see. And even now believe that it's not real and only a dream.
And that's the entire song.
Oh my, okay.
Just a little minute and a half long number that I think it's a nice little bit. I think this wasn't released as a single. I think this was just a leftover song from the sessions. And being as short as it was, I'm guessing they probably just didn't have room to fit it in anywhere, so they just kind of left it. I think it's a nice little number, and the lyrics are kind of vivid. There was a time when you were so young and walked in their way. They made you feel they loved you, seeing all they say. You're going wrong in their game, you don't play. And that song I sing will leave you astray, unfeeling. I feel lonely rejection, unknowing. I know you're going wrong, and they can't see that we're just trying to be, and not what we seem. And even now believe that it's not real and only a dream. Kind of a cool little piece of poetry put to music, really. That's what I would call it. And I actually have one more song to cover, and then I forgot there's a video that I didn't put in my playlist, but I decided to add at the last moment here. So we'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
The Teacher. Now, Teacher was the B-side to Witch's Promise. Heavy bass in this one.
Was coming, heard him ringing on my bed. They said my name's a teacher.
If it wasn't for his voice, I would not know that this was a song.
I call myself, and I have a lesson that I must impart to you. It's an old expression, but I must insist it's true. Jump up the ground, and let's have some fun. No sense in sitting there hating everyone. No man's island, and it's capitalism hard. But that's just putting out there when the bird is flown.
This really does get into prog territory, much like some Witch's Promise were flirted with. It was a B-side. I think. What's that?
I was gonna say, or that first track on the album.
Oh yeah, With You There to Help Me. Yeah, it's interesting, and Teacher is a song that did show up on the U.S. version of the album.
Ah, okay.
And I think it's a song that certainly could. It's not a leftover, certainly. It's a very nice track, and I'm not going to disseminate the lyrics. It's really just from what I can tell, it's literally what the song says that it's about at the beginning. It's about a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing that I have, and I think this is going to be a fun little bit for us, is, and I have to find the right part of the album to get to. Bill Bailey's prog rock top 10. Now, the comedian Bill Bailey is a British comic who you might remember as the owner of the record store in Spaced. And or not the record store, the comic shop, in Spaced. But he's very much a music buff, and this was a special he did in, I believe, the 90s, or maybe early 2000s, where he's talking just about his 10 favorite prog rock bands. And this is a great special. It's most of the episodes are on YouTube, so it's worth watching because you get a little glimpse of it. One thing this episode seems to focus on, we're only going to watch part of it this time. The other part of it we're going to watch a little bit later. is this episode sort of talks about Jethro Tull's kind of the preeminent focus on theatricality that the band would have. Now, I'm going to hit play in a moment, and then just quickly I have to seek out the beginning midway through the video. It's at 6 minutes and 10 seconds for those of you who are trying to find it on your own.
And that video, you can find these videos at youtube.com/movieboozercom under playlists.
It's about to end. They were talking about Yes first, I believe.
So another break looms like a giant mechanized armadillo on a devastated plateau. For 3 short...
I have no idea what that was about.
elves.
Here we go.
Thieves or gatefold. Imagine, if you will, a scene with a Blackpool careers officer circa 1965. Ah, Anderson, come in. So, you wish to play 2 flutes at once, dance around on one leg, dress as a tramp, and thereby become one of the world's leading salmon farmers. Stupid boy. What you need is a codpiece.
Yes, I took to the codpiece. It was a sort of a kind of a demi-bra for men, really. I mean, it was exactly the same purpose, just to sort of create a pleasing, but not too sort of obvious shape. A certain amount of uplift and control, and you know what a bouncing boy needs when dressed in tights on stage.
Deluxe codpieces were but a dream to a young blues band from Blackpool who, in 1968, played to Ina Sharples and a few thousand others as they supported the Pink Floyd in Hyde Park. Jethro Tull had arrived. Even the French liked them.
Un groupe très original, les Jethro Tull.
We'll go walking out while others shout of what disaster. Oh, we won't get fit. Let's go living in the past.
A flute at number 3 in the charts? What were they thinking of?
I try to use it in the same way as Eric Clapton or Jimi Hendrix use their guitars.
Mad as it sounded and looked, progressive flute rock stormed the charts both here and in the States.
Later insisted your feelings were true.
This was 69, 70, the drug culture, and everybody thought that Ian was completely, the most drugged out person that they'd ever seen on stage possible.
How on earth did people get that idea?
I haven't actually or the things that people popularly term drugs.
Thank goodness for that. Ian's anti-drugs and anti-fashion stance also went for the rest of the band.
Most nights, all these sort of bags of dope would get thrown up on the stage, and we'd sort of wander over to them and look down our noses and kick them off the stage.
No drugs. Next thing you know, there'll be no concept album.
The album Aqualung was perceived...
All right, I'll go ahead and stop it here because they're about to talk about the next album. So for the next episode, maybe we'll revisit this video.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was a little bit of an interesting glimpse into their early years, and particularly around the time the Benefit album came out, that's when Anderson started wearing the codpiece on stage, which would become a mainstay of his for about 10 years, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think he finally dropped that pretense in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
And, well, I mean, I don't understand it, but you know what? If it was comfortable for him, that's cool. So anyway, with that said, I think we've reached the end of this episode, and I know I might have mentioned in the first episode errantly that we were going to talk about Aqualung in this episode. We are not. We will in the next one, because that album, much like Benefit, deserves an entire episode to suss out.
Mm-hmm.
So join us next time on Told the Truth.
Yes, thank you. Good night.